one of the reasons that you were elected was that you would fight back on the COVID madness and on the trans explosion of the insanity policies in the Virginia schools. And you have lived up to your word. I, as a parent, watched you campaign on this and watched Terry McAuliffe try to say that parents don't have a say on what goes on inside the classroom. And my jaw dropped. You actually took office and you've done what you promised to do. So let's just spend a minute on the COVID stuff, because it was January that Dr. Anthony Fauci told us he's really not satisfied there was any learning loss at all as a result of these school closures. And Randy Weingarten was featured at the DNC like she was some sort of a heroine, even though she pushed these closures to go on indefinitely.
Yeah, there's not been any more detrimental and misguided policy decisions that were made during the pandemic, and there were a lot, than closing our schools and telling our students that watching a 12-inch screen every day was a quality education. I mean, as I said earlier, Virginia was bottom 10 in the nation in getting our schools back open. And the first thing I did when I came into office was make sure that not only were our schools open, but to give parents the ability to decide whether their child wears a mask or not. We had watched systematic degradation of expectations in our schools. And so when you have students that are told that they're proficient in reading and math, but they're not really proficient in reading and math, and you compound that by locking them out of the school buildings, you're not surprised by the fact that Virginia was top in the nation in learning loss in fourth grade reading and math. I'm going to say that again. Virginia, one of the top education systems in America, was number one in the nation in learning loss in reading and math. And the primary reason was the fact that the foundations were degraded because of expectations that had been lowered in what it took to be proficient. And second of all, the kids were locked out of the classroom. And this is not an indictment of teachers. I will tell you, teachers worked hard to try to do the impossible. But that is why when we last year saw this persistent learning loss, Megyn, we took immediate action and went and worked on a bipartisan basis with our General Assembly and said, we need to fund, particularly in our youngest Virginians, intense tutoring. And so 3rd through 8th graders now get intense tutoring if they are failed or at risk of failing. And by the way, that was over 60% of our students who either failed or risk failing their standards of learning tests. The results are good. We're seeing the test results improved. I need them to improve a lot faster because we're still behind where we were pre-pandemic. The other area that I have been incredibly concerned about is that when policymakers and administrators and teachers associations told families that it wasn't important for their students to be in school, the result of that has been huge increases in chronic absenteeism. I mean, giant increases where students just aren't in the classroom. And if they're not in the classroom, they can't catch up. And so we initiated a statewide effort to tackle chronic absenteeism. We saw a 16% reduction in chronic absenteeism. But again, that's not nearly enough. And so we have to get the kids back in the classroom. And second of all, we have to make sure that they are getting the kinds of support and intensive tutoring that they need. And let me add one more thing, Megyn, and I apologize, but this topic is absolutely a passion of mine, is that during this time period, literally the left facilitated in our kids' lives massive use of social media. And there's been no constraint. And we have seen the role of social media, the addictive nature of social media have such a detrimental impact on our young people. It has damaged them academically. It has caused severe mental health. We have seen the rates of particularly teen girl suicide attempt and self-harm go up over 150%. And we've got to get at this. And so that's why I signed an executive order last week or at the beginning of July that then translated into draft policies last week to make our schools from bell to bell cell phone free. And we're going to make sure we work together to draw some boundaries around our kids so that they can learn better and be healthier.
So we're trying to help the kids who did suffer learning loss turn things around. We're trying to get them off of the screens during academic hours and ideally beyond. You signed an executive order back in 2022 removing CRT, critical race theory, and the nonsense that it teaches, which divides us and separates us by class and by race and gender and so on. And then the trans insanity was reversed by you. That was being put in by your predecessor and Ralph Northam. And that in particular was a restoration of parental rights. Virginia, of all places. I mean, it's more of a southern state, of course, and used to be red. But because of all the people moving to it from the blue DC area, became more and more purple, and now it's kind of blue, was starting to say that parents didn't have the right to know if their child showed up at school and declared that he was a different gender than the one that he actually was, than his biological sex. You changed all that, Governor. Why?
Well, there is a fundamental right that parents have to make the most important decisions in their children's lives. Yes, education, but their health and well-being right at the top of the list. And we had watched parents be shoved out of their children's lives with politicians and bureaucrats and administrators trying to replace them. And how in the world could this incredibly important, impactful, lifelong decision be discussed with somebody at school, but not with parents? And in fact, there was an effort to not tell parents. And so we went to work to reestablish the primary role of parents in their children's lives, to put them at the head of the table so that there cannot be decisions that are made without parental deep involvement. It is about the role of parents in children's lives. It's about families. And most importantly, it's about the long-term well-being of kids. What we have seen, of course, is the reality of Virginians, and I believe Americans, recognize this is not a political issue. It's not Republicans versus Democrats. And in fact, one of our observations in our 2021 campaign was that education, and particularly the role of parents in their children's lives and standing strong for those rights, was not just bipartisan, it was universally supported. And I once again believe that Republicans should be winning on this topic of education. We hold high standards. We believe in empowering parents to make decisions with their children, for their children, to not have things imposed on them. We believe that biological boys should not be playing sports with biological girls. Now, that's fair. That is fair. We have to make sure we stand up for women. And the effort, again, that the Biden-Harris administration has made, that Kamala Harris has made, to completely gut the progress in Title IX over the last decades to empower women and girls in America is shameful. We've got to stand up for women and girls. And this idea that, again, we're going to allow biological boys to play sports with biological girls is just beyond common sense.
Okay, so I just want to go over this. You cut taxes, stimulated business, got the kids back in school, removed the mask mandates, restored some of the learning loss that had been imposed under your predecessor, removed CRT from the schools, got rid of the trans insanity that was governing the teachers and the students, sent National Guard troops from Virginia down to help restore the border in Texas, cleaning up the voter rolls to make sure it's purged of dead people and illegals. And in a now blue state, you have, according to Roanoke College polling, likely voters, a 59% approval rating as a conservative Republican governor. That's the model. I mean, a lot of people think, Governor, that in order to get numbers like that at the state level or the national level, you have to be moderate. You've got to be, forgive me, but more like a Mitt Romney type. And that's the only way forward for Republicans to win the national vote and to win the Electoral College. You are proving that to be untrue every day of your term.
Well, first of all, you're very kind to offer that assessment. I have to tell you, when I decided that I was going to run for governor, and after my wife stopped crying and we prayed over it, and we locked our arms together and said that if hired, we would serve. We also committed ourselves to try to do what's right. And oftentimes we find that there are pressures that take us off of what's right. We've made mistakes, and let me just be clear, I know we have, but we try really hard to stick to common sense, conservative values that work. And the difference, I believe, today is instead of a philosophical debate of what could be under one set of policies versus another set of policies, we have real life case studies that show that common sense conservative policies work and the left liberal progressive policies don't. Virginia, which had moved so far left, was seeing a stagnant economy, was seeing small businesses close left, right, and center, was seeing a 20% high in a 20% increase in murder rate, a 20-year high. We saw test scores plummeting across the Commonwealth, and we were watching people move away faster than they were moving here. The same thing happened at the national level. We watched common sense in the first Trump administration really demonstrate economic strength, foreign policy strength, border strength. And the reality is this works. And then you compare that to what we've seen over the last 3.5 years. And what we have, again, seen very clearly is weak foreign policy causes chaos around the world. The border czar, Kamala Harris's failure to do anything at the border has caused chaos across the United States. I mean, we have seen such travesty just in Virginia. We have, on average, 5 Virginians a day that die from fentanyl overdoses. We had 2 illegal immigrants that tried to ram the front gate at Marine Base Quantico. I mean, come on. They had a box truck and they tried to drive through the front gate of Quantico and ram it down. We've seen young women sexually assaulted. This is craziness. And then finally, of course, when it comes to representing the core values of hard work and education and public safety, I mean, these are foundational, that we want people to have jobs where they go to work every day and get paid and keep more of that money in their pocket.
If you did not vote for this economic downturn, and who did? Well, we know who did. And the high inflation, you might want to do something about it. Right now, you're paying for it at the pump, the grocery store, growing stacks of unpaid bills sitting there. Financial stress can be crushing, and one solution could be donewithdebt.com. Done with Debt created new aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently without bankruptcy or loans. Done with Debt can stand between you and bill collectors. They negotiate with your creditors to write off balances, cut interest, stop penalties, and the best news is, Done with Debt is accepting new clients right now. But you need to hurry because some of their debt strategies are time sensitive, and you don't want to miss out. Let Done with Debt hit the debt reset button for you and make your money yours again. Visit donewithdebt.com or call 1-888-322-1054 now. Chat with one of their relief strategists for free. Donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.